The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal and living light. And on this day it held representatives from 900 different species who had traveled from every corner of known space to witness what would become the greatest mistake in galactic history. Commander Vathus of the Solari Dominion stood at the central platform, his body made of pure golden energy that shifted and pulsed with his emotions. And right now, those emotions burned with desperation and anger that he could barely contain. His people had been fighting the Kreth Collective for 300 cycles, and they were losing. "Honored members of the Council," Vathus announced, his voice carrying through the massive chamber like thunder. "I come before you today not to ask for soldiers or ships or weapons from your great civilizations, for I know that none of you wish to enter our war directly." The representatives shifted nervously in their seats because they all knew what the Solari wanted, and they all feared what might happen if they refused. Instead, Vathus continued with a smile that held no warmth. "I wish to inform you of a discovery that will change the nature of our conflict forever. My scouts have found a species in the outer spiral arm, a young and primitive race that has not yet achieved faster than light travel, and they possess exactly what the Dominion needs." Murmurs spread through the assembly like waves across a still pond, and many of the elder species exchanged worried glances because they had seen this before, a desperate empire looking to conscript younger races into their endless conflicts. "These creatures call themselves humans," Mathos declared, "and they are warriors of remarkable capability. Our observation teams have studied their world for several of their years, and what we have witnessed is extraordinary." He waved his hand and a massive holographic display appeared above the council floor, showing images of a blue and green world covered in vast oceans and sprawling cities. And the representatives leaned forward with curiosity. "They fight constantly," Vathus explained with obvious delight. "Not just against external threats, but against each other. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet many times over, and yet they persist and multiply and grow stronger with each conflict." "This is madness," called out a representative from the Volani Communion, her insectoid body clicking with agitation. "You wish to bring a violent and unstable species into a galactic war?" "I wish to use their natural talents," Vathus corrected. "They will serve as soldiers for the Dominion, and in return, we will grant them access to the stars. They will not be grateful." The voice came from the shadows at the far end of the council chamber, and every head turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness. He was tall and thin, his body made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light, and he moved with the slow, careful grace of someone who had lived for thousands upon thousands of years. Ambassador Calthan had not spoken in the council for nearly 500 cycles, and his appearance now sent ripples of shock through the gathered representatives. "Ambassador," Vathus said with barely concealed irritation, "I was not aware you still attended these sessions." "I attend when matters of importance arise," Calthan replied, his crystalline voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "And this matter is of the highest importance because you are about to make a terrible error that cannot be undone." He walked slowly toward the central platform, and with each step, the lights in the chamber seemed to dim slightly as if the very building recognized the weight of his presence. "I know of Earth," Calthan said. "I was stationed there as an observer for 2 of their centuries, watching and learning and trying to understand what manner of creatures they truly were. Then you know they are perfect for our needs." Vathos interrupted eagerly. "Aggressive and territorial, and I know that I left Earth, not because my mission ended." Calvin continued as if the commander had not spoken at all. "I left because I was afraid. I have lived for 11,000 years, and I have witnessed the rise and fall of empires that spanned entire galaxies, but I have never encountered a species like humanity." The council chamber fell completely silent. "You see their violence, and you think you understand them," Calvin said. turning to address the entire assembly. You see their wars and their weapons, and you believe they are simply aggressive, primitives who can be controlled and directed like hunting animals. But you are wrong in ways you cannot begin to imagine. He raised his crystalline hand and the holographic display changed, showing scenes of human history wars and battles and destruction that made even the most hardened military commanders in the audience flinch. Yes, they fight, Calthon acknowledged. But look closer. Look at what they build after they destroy. Look at how they care for their wounded enemies. Look at how they create laws and treaties specifically designed to limit their own capacity for violence. This proves nothing, Vathus scoffed. It proves everything, Calthon countered, because it shows that humans understand exactly how dangerous they are. They have spent their entire history trying to contain themselves, to build chains around their own nature, to prevent the very thing you wish to unleash. He stepped closer to Vathos and his blue light intensified until it was almost painful to observe. I warned another species once, Calthon said softly, a young and foolish civilization called the Tethrani, who believed they could abduct humans for use in their genetic experiments. Do you know what happened to the Tethrani, Commander? Vathus said nothing. They do not exist anymore. Calthon answered his own question. Not because humans destroyed them directly, but because once humans learned that there were other beings in the universe who wished them harm, they united in ways they had never united before. Within a single generation, they had developed weapons that made their nuclear arsenals look like children's toys, and the Tethrani were simply gone. He turned back to the council. I came here today to deliver a warning that I hope you will all remember. Do not pull Earth into our war. Do not make contact with humanity. Do not let them know that we exist and that we are watching them. Because if you do, if you force them to look outward instead of inward, if you give them a reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting us. He paused, and his light flickered with something that looked very much like fear. You will not survive what answers. And with those words, Ambassador Calthon walked back into the shadows and disappeared, leaving behind a council chamber full of worried representatives and one Solari commander who's already planning his trip to Earth. Because the desperate never listened to wisdom, and Commander Vathos was very desperate indeed. The Solari warship descended through Earth's atmosphere at exactly midnight, its golden hull glowing like a second sun as it cut through the clouds above the Pacific Ocean. And Commander Vathus stood on the observation deck with absolute confidence that this would be the easiest conquest of his entire military career. They have detected us, reported his sensor officer, a young Solari named Thyral, whose light flickered with barely contained excitement. Multiple primitive radar systems are tracking our descent. Let them watch, Vathus replied with a dismissive wave. Let them see the glory of the Dominion and understand that their time as an isolated species has come to an end. The ship settled onto the water's surface, its anti-gravity systems creating a perfect platform that kept it floating without touching the waves. And Vathus smiled because everything was going exactly according to plan. But then something unexpected happened. Commander, Thyral said, his voice suddenly uncertain, I am detecting weapons activations across the planet. Of course you are, Vathus replied calmly. They are primitives who fear what they do not understand. No, sir, you do not understand, Thyral interrupted, which was a breach of military protocol so severe that Vathos turned to stare at him in shock. I am detecting 4,200 separate weapon systems activating across every continent. He pulled up a holographic display of the planet, and Vathos felt his confidence waver for the first time. Red dots were appearing everywhere, on every landmass, in every ocean, on islands so small they barely registered on the scanners. And the strangest part was that many of these weapons had been pointed at each other just moments ago, but now they were all turning toward the Solari ship. That is not possible, Vathus whispered. They have no unified government. Our intelligence indicated they are divided into hundreds of competing nations. They were. Thyrol confirmed, but they are not anymore. Every single nation on this planet is now pointing weapons at us, Commander, including nations that were literally at war with each other 5 minutes ago. 12,000 kilometers away in a secure bunker beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Marcus Webb received a phone call that would change human history forever. He'd been sleeping when his aide burst through the door, and he went from unconscious to fully alert in less than 3 seconds, because that was what 40 years of military training had taught him to do. Unknown vessel, his aide reported breathlessly. Pacific Ocean, approximately 300 kilometers west of Hawaii. It descended from orbit, sir, and it is definitely not one of ours. Webb was dressed and in the command center within 4 minutes, and what he saw on the screens made his heart pound with a mixture of fear and something else, something that felt almost like excitement. What do we know? He demanded. It is roughly 2 kilometers in length, reported one of his analysts. Propulsion systems are unlike anything in our databases. Hull composition appears to be some kind of metallic crystal hybrid that our instruments cannot fully analyze. Weapons? Unknown, but given the size and the fact that it flew here from somewhere beyond our solar system, we should assume it can destroy us if it wants to. Webb nodded slowly and then turned to his communications officer. Get me Moscow, Beijing, London, and the Secretary General of the United Nations on a secure channel now. The next 30 minutes were the most intense diplomatic negotiations in human history, and they were also the shortest. Because when the leaders of Earth saw the alien vessel floating on the Pacific, when they understood that something from beyond the stars had come to their world, every single disagreement they had ever had suddenly seemed very small and very foolish. We are in agreement, announced the Russian president. Whatever happens next, humanity speaks with one voice. China concurs, added the Chinese premier. This is not an American issue, or a Russian issue, or a Chinese issue. This is a human issue. The United Kingdom stands ready, confirmed the British Prime Minister. And so was that for the first time in recorded history. Every nuclear power on Earth pointed their weapons in the same direction. Every military force activated their most advanced systems. And every nation agreed that whatever came next, they would face it together. General Webb took command of the unified response, and his first order was simple. Nobody fires until I give the word, but everyone stays ready. I want fighter jets in the air within 50 kilometers of that ship, submarines within torpedo range, and every satellite we have gathering information. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the vessel. It appears to be in English. How do they know English? Unknown, sir, but the message is clear. They are demanding to speak with our leadership, and they are claiming something called conscription rights under Galactic Statute 774. Webb stared at the screen for a long moment. Conscription rights, he repeated slowly. They want to draft us into something? It appears so, sir. The message indicates that Earth has been selected to provide soldiers for something called the Solari Dominion, and that resistance will be, and I quote, inadvisable. Webb felt his jaw tighten, and around him the command center fell completely silent as everyone waited to see how their general would respond. They landed a warship on our planet without permission, Webb said quietly, and now they are demanding that we give them our people? That appears to be the situation, sir. Webb turned to face his staff, and there was something in his eyes that made even the most senior officers take a step back, a cold and terrible determination that had been bred into humanity through 10,000 years of warfare. Get me a direct line to that ship, he ordered, and begin preparations for boarding operations. Boarding operations, sir? His aide asked in confusion. We do not have the technology to. Then we will develop it. Webb interrupted, because those aliens just made the biggest mistake in the history of their civilization. They came to Earth looking for soldiers, and they are about to learn why humans have spent so long fighting each other instead of looking for alien life. Why is that, sir? Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Because anything that was watching us learned a long time ago that the smartest thing to do was hide. And these fools just told us they exist, where they come from, and that they think we are weak enough to bully. He turned back to the screens, showing the alien vessel. Contact every university on the planet, he ordered. Every research facility, every technology company. Tell them that starting today, they're all working on the same project. What project, General? Figuring out how that ship works and building our own, and I want it done in 18 months or less. His officers stared at him in disbelief. That is impossible, sir. 20 years ago, people said the same thing about smartphones. Webb replied, and 40 years before that they said it about landing on the moon. Humanity does impossible things when we are properly motivated. And right now, I'm very properly motivated. He clasped his hands behind his back and watched the alien ship floating on the Pacific. They came here looking for weapons, he said softly, and they found 8 billion of them. The Solari delegation beamed down to Earth, expecting to meet primitive leaders who would bow before the glory of the Dominion. And instead, they found themselves standing in a cold, concrete room surrounded by armed soldiers, whose faces showed no fear whatsoever. Commander Vathus had brought 3 of his officers with him, Thyril and 2 warriors named Celtrix and Vaughn, and all 4 of them now stood in the center of what the humans called an interrogation chamber. Their energy forms flickering with confusion and the beginnings of genuine concern. This is not the welcome we were promised, Vathus declared loudly. We are representatives of the Solari Dominion, and we demand to speak with your world leaders. A door opened at the far end of the room, and a human woman walked in with the calm confidence of someone who had absolutely nothing to fear. She was tall and slim with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot, and she wore a dark suit that looked expensive and professional. I am Director Elizabeth Sloan of the United Earth Emergency Council, she announced, taking a seat at the table in the center of the room, and I will be conducting this negotiation. Negotiation? Vathus repeated with a harsh laugh. There is nothing to negotiate. Under galactic law, your species falls within Dominion conscription territory, and you will provide soldiers for our war against the Kreth Collective. Director Sloan studied him with cool gray eyes that revealed absolutely nothing. I see, she said. And what happens if we refuse? Then we will take what we need by force, Vathus replied, allowing his energy form to flare brighter with threat. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your defenses are meaningless against our technology, and your people will serve the Dominion whether they wish to or not. Sloan nodded slowly as if considering his words. I appreciate your honesty, she said, and in the spirit of that honesty, I have some information to share with you. She pressed a button on the table, and a holographic display appeared showing the Solari warship still floating on the Pacific Ocean. Your vessel has been disabled, Sloan informed him calmly. Impossible, Vathus scoffed. Your technology is centuries behind. Was, Sloan corrected. Past tense. 23 hours ago, our scientists began analyzing the energy signatures your ship produces. And 11 hours ago, they found a way to disrupt your quantum communication frequencies. She pressed another button and the display changed to show technical readouts that made Vathus's light flicker with sudden alarm. Your engines are offline, Sloan continued. Your weapon systems have been locked out by a virus our programmers created specifically for your computer architecture. And your ship is currently being towed to a secure facility where it will be studied in great detail. You are lying, Thyril whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. I am not, Sloan replied. And I should mention that your ship's navigation computer was particularly helpful. We now have complete charts of Solari space, Kreth territory, and approximately 400 other civilizations in this region of the galaxy. She leaned forward, and her eyes were like ice. Did you really think that a species capable of splitting the atom and walking on the moon would simply surrender when confronted with superior technology? She asked, did you truly believe that 8 billion people who have been fighting each other for 10,000 years would just give up and become your servants? Vathus said nothing because for the first time since arriving on Earth, he was beginning to understand just how badly he had miscalculated. We do not hire ourselves out as soldiers, Sloane continued, but we have reviewed the information in your databases about this war you are fighting, and we have some thoughts. She slid a folder across the table, actual paper in a physical folder, which seemed almost insultingly primitive to the Solari officers. Your conflict with the Kreth Collective has lasted for 300 cycles, Sloane said. In that time, you have lost approximately 18 billion soldiers, and they have lost roughly the same. You fight over territory and resources and ideological differences, and neither side can achieve decisive victory. This is correct, Vathus admitted reluctantly, which is why we need fresh soldiers. No, Sloane interrupted. What you need is someone who knows how to end wars, not just fight them. She opened the folder and began spreading documents across the table. Humanity has fought approximately 9,000 wars in our recorded history, she explained. We have destroyed cities and nations and empires. We have developed weapons capable of ending all life on our planet. We have committed horrors that would make your worst nightmares seem pleasant by comparison. The Solari officers exchanged nervous glances. But we have also developed something far more valuable, Sloane continued. We have developed expertise in ending conflicts decisively and permanently. We know how to break an enemy's will to fight. We know how to destroy their capacity for war without destroying their entire civilization. And we know how to rebuild afterwards so that the peace actually lasts. She stood up and walked around the table to stand directly in front of Vathus. You came here looking for cannon fodder, she said quietly. Expendable soldiers to throw at your enemies until one side or the other runs out of bodies. But that is not what humanity does, Commander, because we learned long ago that such wars never truly end. What are you proposing? Vathus asked. We are proposing a partnership, Sloane replied. Not as your conscripts or your servants, but as your advisors and eventually your allies. We will help you end this war, but we will do it our way. And what is your way? Sloane smiled, and something in that expression made Vathos's energy form contract with instinctive fear. First, we build ships, she said. Lots of ships. Using the technology we are reverse engineering from your vessel right now. Our engineers estimate we can have a functional fleet within 18 months. That is not possible. You keep saying that, Sloane interrupted. And yet here you are, your ship disabled, your communications blocked, your databases copied, and your delegation being lectured by a species you considered primitive 12 hours ago. She returned to her seat. Second, we will study your enemy. We will learn their psychology, their culture, their fears, and their weaknesses. And then we will develop a strategy that exploits every single one of those weaknesses. The Kreth have been fighting for 300 cycles, Tyrell objected. They have no weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses, Sloane replied. You just have not been creative enough to find them. But creativity is something humans excel at, especially when it comes to warfare. She closed the folder and stood up. You have two choices, Commander. You can accept our partnership and help us understand your technology and your enemy, in which case this war will be over within 2 years. Or you can refuse, in which case we will keep your ship anyway and figure everything out ourselves, which might take a little longer, but will still result in humanity entering the galactic stage. She walked toward the door. Either way, you have woken something that the universe is not ready for. The only question is whether you will benefit from that awakening or become a cautionary tale for other civilizations who think they can push humanity around. She paused at the doorway. You have 1 hour to decide. I suggest you use it wisely. And with that, Director Sloan left the room, leaving 4 very frightened Solari officers to contemplate the terrible mistake they had made. 18 months after the Solari ship landed on Earth, humanity arrived at the front lines of a war that had been raging for 3 centuries, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Lin Chun stood on the bridge of the UE's Perseverance, flagship of the United Earth Navy, and watched through the view screen as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue light that illuminated the darkness of space. Behind her came 47 more vessels, brutal angular ships made of dark metal and bristling with weapons. Their hulls painted with names that spoke of humanity's complicated relationship with warfare. Spite, defiance, remember the fallen never again, and the grimly named This is for everything. All ships report successful transit, announced her tactical officer, a young woman named Commander Torres. We are in formation and ready for orders. Chun nodded and studied the sensor displays that showed the battle raging ahead of them. The Solari fleet was engaged with the Kreth Collective, golden ships trading fire with vessels that looked like massive insects made of black chitin and glowing red energy. Open a channel to the Solari command, Chun ordered, and put it on the main screen. Commander Vathus appeared on the view screen, and Chun noted with some satisfaction that he looked exhausted. 18 months of working with human military advisors had taught him many things, but it had also shown him just how limited his own species' approach to warfare really was. Admiral Chun, Vathus greeted her. We are grateful for your arrival. The Kreth have brought a larger force than anticipated, and we are struggling to maintain our defensive positions. Understood, Chen replied. Pull your ships back to our rear. Humanity will take the forward position. Vathus hesitated for just a moment. The Solari were proud warriors who did not like retreating, but then he nodded and began issuing orders to his fleet. Tactical, Chun said, turning to Commander Torres. What are we facing? Approximately 200 Kreth warships, Admiral, including 12 of their heavy dreadnoughts. They outnumber us roughly 4-1. Weapons status? All ships report weapons armed and ready. Kinetic batteries are loaded. Missile tubes are hot, and the special packages are standing by for deployment. Chun allowed herself a small smile. The special packages were humanity's secret weapon, not a new technology or a superweapon, but something far more effective. Psychology. For the past 18 months, human intelligence operatives had been studying the Kreth Collective, learning their culture and their history and their deepest fears. And what they had discovered was that the Kreth, for all their fearsome reputation, had never truly faced an enemy who fought the way humans fought. Broadcast on all frequencies, Chun ordered. Maximum power. I want every Kreth ship in the system to hear this. Channel open, Admiral. Chun stood up straight and began to speak. Attention Kreth Collective Forces. I am Admiral Lin Chun of the United Earth Navy, and I am here to offer you a choice. You can surrender now and survive, or you can continue fighting and learn why my species has spent 10,000 years trying to teach ourselves not to do what we are very good at doing. She paused for effect. You have heard rumors about humanity, I am sure. You have been told that we are primitives, that we are violent and unstable, that we were conscripted by the Solari as cannon fodder. Some of these things are true, and some of them are not. On the tactical display, Chun could see the Kreth fleet hesitating, their ships slowing their advance as they listened to her words. What is true is that we are violent, Chun continued. But what you do not understand is that our violence is not a weakness. It is a skill we have refined over countless generations. We do not fight the way you fight, with honor and rules and limitations. We fight to win, and we do not stop until the enemy is no longer capable of fighting back. She nodded to Commander Torres, who pressed a button. Across every Kreth ship, screens suddenly displayed images from human history footage of nuclear explosions and bombed cities, of trench warfare and genocide, of weapons tests and military parades. The images came with audio recordings of explosions and screaming, and the terrible silence that follows total destruction. "This is what we do to each other," Chun announced. "This is what we have spent centuries learning to control. And you have given us permission to stop controlling it." The Kreth fleet had stopped advancing entirely, and Chun could imagine the confusion and fear spreading through their ships as they watched the horrifying images from Earth's past. "Forward element, begin attack run," Chun ordered quietly. "Target their command ships first." 12 human vessels surged forward with an acceleration that should have been impossible, their engines pushing them faster than the Kreth sensors could track. They did not fire their weapons at first, instead broadcasting more psychological warfare recordings of human soldiers in combat, their voices shouting in dozens of languages, their determination obvious even to alien ears. Then the weapons came online. Human ships did not use energy weapons like the Solari or biological projectiles like the Kreth. Instead, they used kinetic weapons, massive metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic rails, each one carrying enough force to punch through any armor ever designed. The first salvo hit the Kreth command ship and tore through it like paper, the massive insectoid vessel breaking apart in a shower of debris and frozen atmosphere. "Target destroyed," Torres reported, her voice professionally calm despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. Switching to secondary targets. The battle lasted 9 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes. The Kreth had never faced an enemy who used their own damaged ships as weapons, ramming them into enemy formations with skeleton crews who volunteered to sacrifice themselves for victory. They had never faced an enemy who broadcast constant psychological attacks, filling their communication channels with static and screaming and carefully designed sounds that triggered primal fear responses. By hour 6, Kreth commanders were surrendering their vessels rather than face boarding parties. The rumors had spread through their fleet of what happened when humans took a ship by force, and even though those rumors were mostly exaggerated, the fear they created was very real. By hour 9, the Kreth Collective's high command sent a direct transmission to Earth. "We surrender," the message said, "unconditionally and completely. Please stop." Admiral Chun read the message on her screen and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning to her crew. "Cease fire on all vessels that are not actively hostile," she ordered. "Begin search and rescue operations for survivors. I want medical teams ready to treat wounded enemies as well as allies." Vathos appeared on the view screen again, his golden form flickering with something that looked like shock. You are going to help them?" he asked, "after they killed so many of your soldiers?" "Of course," Chun replied. "The war is over. Now we rebuild." She looked back at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in the Kreth Collective. "This is what makes humanity dangerous," she said quietly. "Not just our ability to destroy, but our ability to stop destroying when the job is done. Other species fight until extinction because they do not know how to stop. We have learned to win and then extend our hand to the defeated." She turned back to Vathos. "Contact Kreth Command and tell them we are sending humanitarian aid. And tell them that Earth has some conditions for the peace treaty that they will not enjoy, but that they will accept if they want to survive." Vathos nodded slowly, still trying to process everything he had witnessed. "What kind of conditions?" he asked. Chun smiled. The kind that ensure this never happens again. We call it accountability. And the galaxy is about to learn what that word really means. One standard year after the Battle of Theraxis Prime, Ambassador Kelvin returned to the Great Hall of the Galactic Council for the first time since he had delivered his warning about humanity. And what he found there shocked him to his ancient crystalline core. The chamber that had once held representatives from 900 species now felt empty and haunted. Many seats remained occupied, but the beings who sat in them were different, somehow quieter, more cautious, their eyes constantly darting toward the human delegation that occupied a prominent position near the central platform. The Solari section was completely empty. Kelvin made his way through the chamber with slow, deliberate steps, his crystal body dimming with sorrow as he passed the vacant seats. The Solari Dominion had not been destroyed. Humanity had been very specific about that, but their leaders had resigned in disgrace after the truth about their attempted conscription of Earth became public. They had retreated to their home systems, traumatized by what they had witnessed their supposed conscripts become, and they would not return to galactic politics for many generations. Ambassador Kelvin, a voice called out, and he turned to see a human woman approaching him with an extended hand. She was tall, with short gray hair and eyes that held both warmth and steel. "I am Director Sloan of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. I have read your file, and I wanted to thank you personally." "Thank me?" Kelvin asked in confusion, accepting her strange human greeting. "For what?" "For trying to warn them," Sloan replied. "Your testimony to the Council was included in the data we recovered from the Solari ship. We know that you tried to prevent what happened." Kelvin's crystalline form flickered with complex emotions. "I did try," he acknowledged, "but I failed. They did not listen, and now," he gestured at the nearly empty Solari section, "and now the galaxy will never be the same." Sloan finished for him. "Yes, that is true. But that change does not have to be a bad thing." She led him to a seat near the human delegation as the session began. The topic of discussion was the new peace treaty that humanity had imposed on both the Solari Dominion and the Kreth Collective, a document that had sent shockwaves through every civilization in known space. "The Treaty of Earth is unlike anything in galactic history," announced the current council speaker, a rotund being from the Multhari Confederation who seemed nervous despite his official position. "Its provisions include mandatory disarmament of offensive capabilities, required reparations to species harmed during the conflict, and most unusually something the humans call war crime tribunals." Murmurs spread through the chamber. "These tribunals," the speaker continued, "will hold individual commanders and political leaders accountable for atrocities committed during the war. The humans insist that hiding behind orders or government authority is not an acceptable defense." More murmurs, louder this time, with tones of both outrage and fear. Kelvin understood why. In most galactic civilizations, leaders were essentially immune from consequences for their wartime decisions. The idea that they could be held personally responsible was terrifying to many of the beings in this room. Director Sloan rose from her seat and walked to the central platform, and the chamber fell instantly silent. Humans had only been part of galactic society for less than 2 years, but already their reputation preceded them wherever they went. "I understand that many of you are concerned about the precedents we are setting," Sloan began, her voice calm and measured. "You worry that these tribunals will be used against your own leaders, that the concept of accountability will spread beyond this single conflict." She paused and looked around the chamber. "You are correct to worry, because that is exactly what will happen." The murmurs became shouts of protest, but Sloan simply waited until the chamber quieted again. "Humanity did not ask to join your wars," she continued. "We did not seek the stars hoping to conquer or dominate. For 10,000 years we fought only ourselves. and in that time we came very close to destroying our entire planet. She pressed a button and holographic images appeared above the council floor, images of Earth at its worst moments, of mushroom clouds and ruined cities, of concentration camps and mass graves. "We did these things to each other," Sloan said softly. "We committed horrors that I cannot describe without feeling shame for my entire species. And when the horror ended, we made a choice. We decided that we would never allow such things to happen again, and we built systems specifically designed to prevent them." She waved her hand, and the images changed, showing courtrooms and trees and international organizations. "We created laws that apply to everyone, including our most powerful leaders. We established tribunals to hold war criminals accountable for their crimes. We built institutions whose only purpose is to remind us of our own capacity for evil so that we never forget why we must be careful." She turned to face the council directly. "You came to Earth seeking weapons, and you found a species that had spent centuries learning to chain its own nature. You woke us from our isolation and showed us that the galaxy is full of civilizations who have never learned the lessons we learned through blood and suffering." Her voice hardened. "The war is over. The Kreth have surrendered. The Zolari have retreated. But humanity's work has just begun." She began walking slowly around the platform. "We will not seek to conquer your worlds or control your governments. That is not who we are, despite what you may fear. But we will also not stand by and watch while civilizations commit atrocities in the name of politics or religion or simple greed. This galaxy now has our attention, our ships, our soldiers, and our scientists. We are here to stay, and we intend to be good neighbors." She stopped and smiled, but there was no warmth in that expression. "However, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. If any civilization in this galaxy ever threatens Earth again, if anyone ever tries to conscript our people, or invade our world, or harm our children, we will respond with everything we have." She paused to let her words sink in. "You have seen what we can do when we are motivated. You have witnessed how quickly we can adapt and learn and overcome. And you have heard the stories of how we fight when we truly believe our survival is at stake. I truly hope that you never give us a reason to demonstrate these capabilities again." She turned and walked back toward the human delegation. "We were not hiding from you all these years," she said over her shoulder. "We were protecting you from us. And now that the secret is out, the responsibility falls on all of you to ensure that we never have cause to stop protecting." She took her seat next to Kelthan, and the ancient ambassador found himself looking at her with something very close to respect. "Do you think they understood?" he asked quietly. Sloan watched the council members whispering frantically among themselves, their faces showing various combinations of fear and anger and grudging acceptance. "Some of them did," she replied, "and the ones who did not understand today will learn eventually. Humanity has become very good at teaching lessons, and we have a great deal of patience." She smiled at him, a genuine smile this time, with actual warmth. "Besides, we have you to help us navigate galactic politics. Your warning may not have stopped the war, but it showed us that not everyone in this galaxy is our enemy." Kelvin considered her words for a long moment. "I spent 11,000 years observing and studying and trying to understand the universe," he finally said. "And I never imagined that my most important contribution would be trying and failing to warn people about a species from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system." "The universe has a sense of humor," Sloan agreed. They sat together in comfortable silence as the council session continued. Two beings from very different worlds who had both learned the same fundamental truth: that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not the species that fights the hardest, but the species that has learned when to stop fighting. And somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, humanity continued to build and grow and watch, ready to defend their new place in the universe and hoping with all their hearts that they would never have to.